Watercolor can be so magical, but let's be honest, it can also be really frustrating at times. Over the years, I've faced all the classic struggles: water control, muddy colors, overworked paper, and nearly gave up more than once. But along the way, I've picked up a handful of strategies that quietly changed everything. So in this video, I'm sharing 7 of my most trusted watercolor secrets. A few of these tips, especially number 4, might surprise you. They go against traditional watercolor rules, but they really work. Others are quite simple, yet incredibly powerful once you understand how to apply them. I hope these help you feel more confident, inspired, and a little less alone in your watercolor journey. Let's dive in. And I just finished this big tropical composition for my Patreon subscribers. Believe it or not, it's the smallest part, this delicate butterfly, that ended up being the most demanding. It really pushed me to use nearly every trick in my toolkit. In this video, I'll take you through the butterfly step by step and show you exactly how I did it. If you want to paint along with me, I've included a link to the reference photo in the description. And as always, if you're looking for the real-time tutorial with black and white outlines, step-by-step photos, and full narration, it's all available on my Patreon channel. Trick number 1 is something I do all the time, before and sometimes even during my painting process, and it makes a huge difference. I convert my references to black and white view. This way you'll know exactly where to keep your washes light and watery, and where to go in with richer, more saturated color to build up layers like we'll do in just a moment. And you can easily do this on your phone or iPad, or use Photoshop if you have this app. I like boosting the contrast a little to really bring out the highlights and details. And here's the thing, looking at a subject without color helps you clearly see the values, meaning lights and darks, so you can plan your painting with more confidence. This trick is especially useful for darker subjects like this one, where it's tempting to paint everything really dark right away and lose all the subtle details. But remember, achieving the right balance of light and shadow matters much more than matching colors if you're aiming for realism. Once you can see the lights and darks, it's so much easier to control how much water to add and where to go bold with your strokes. Secret number 2 is all about your sketch, and trust me, this one can save you a lot of frustration. So I start by sketching the butterfly, and already I can see the details in the black and white image that weren't obvious in the color photo. And the key thing to keep in mind is to always use a hard graphite pencil on watercolor paper. This is something I've learned the hard way. Softer pencils leave too much graphite behind. They smudge easily and are nearly impossible to erase without damaging the cotton surface of your paper. And this ruins your chances of getting clean, smooth washes later on. To find out if your pencil is soft or hard, look for a mark on the side. Regardless of the brand, it will have some letters and numbers, and if you find B, 2B, or 3B or higher, it means your graphite is too soft. Instead, reach for an H-marked pencil, or even better, 2H or 3H. Those are my favorites. These give you very light, clean lines that won't interfere with your paint and will barely be visible by the time you're done. And here's a quick side note. If you're still building confidence with drawing, don't feel bad about tracing. Drawing and painting are 2 separate skills, and I feel very strongly about this point. They both take time. In watercolor especially, an inaccurate or overworked sketch can really throw off your final result. This is why I always provide black and white outlines for all my tutorials, so simplify where you can. Trace the outlines if all you want to focus on is just practicing watercolor skills. Enjoy the process and give yourself room to grow. You can absolutely build both skills, drawing and painting, but give yourself permission to focus on one at a time. I'm going to move on to tip number 3, and by the way, all of these and more are summarized in my new book, 101 Watercolor Secrets. It's been trending on Amazon Art Encyclopedias for months, and I'm so grateful for your support. So do grab a copy if you're looking to learn more in depth about watercolor techniques. And here I'm painting small red dots on the butterfly wing. My secret is to always lay down the lighter color segments before I paint the dark. Watercolors are transparent, but you can still overlap color blocks to make sure the edges are clean. So I start by applying these tiny red spots using my lighter quinacridone coral, knowing that I will cover most of the wings later with much darker color. Notice that I go slightly outside of my pencil outlines to make sure there's good coverage, and later on I will finesse the details with darker color, getting closer to my pencil outlines and mask all the imperfections. Now for one of my most unusual tricks, the one that I get asked about all the time. Ready? I rarely pre-wet my paper with clean water when doing wet into wet washes. I know that might sound shocking if you've learned the classic method to wet the paper first, then drop in the color and let it flow. That works beautifully for loose washes, big skies, or large abstract shapes. But when you're painting something intricate like butterfly wings or delicate plant leaves, clear water can cause more trouble than it's worth. It's hard to control and your colors might bleed outside of your pencil outline. Instead, I start with a very diluted version of my base color, whatever color you see most clearly in the reference. In this case, it's dark indigo. I lightly fill in the shape with that soft color, staying within my pencil lines, and gradually add more pigment to darken certain areas, especially around the edges. It's like I'm prepping the paper and building the shape at the same time, but this way with way more control than if I used clear water. I can see exactly where my brush is going and I never lose the boundaries. I use this method all the time, not just on butterflies, but also on more complex shapes like the lobster claw plant or tea leaves. Instead of one clear water wash, I sometimes use 2 different diluted colors to block in the shape and build up from there. So if you've been struggling with fuzzy edges or unpredictable bleeds, try this. Skip clear water and start with a tinted wash. It's a game changer. Secret number 5 is my favorite trick for creating highlights and very intricate natural light details with lifting technique. One of the most frustrating things about watercolor is the fact that we can't apply light colors on top of dark, but we can always lift fresh paint, revealing the lighter details like I'm doing here to create subtle veins on the wing. 2 important things to keep in mind here. Always clean the brush and tap it on tissue paper to remove excess water so you're working with damp, almost dry bristles. Synthetic brushes, especially flat ones, are your best friend, and I'm working with my favorite Escoda Chronos, dragging the edge to remove indigo off the page. You can apply the flat side too if you want to remove larger areas, and I used a lot of this lifting technique in the rest of the composition, especially on the lobster claw. Final piece of advice to ensure your lifting technique is successful is to keep in mind that watercolors generally fall into 2 categories, staining and non-staining. Staining pigments sink in really deep into the surface of your paper, and this lifting technique is only possible while they're still wet. With non-staining pigments like ochres or siennas, you will be able to do it at any point. They come off the page much easier. And if you're wondering whether your pigment is staining or not, just look for this sign on the tube. To learn more about the properties of your pigments so you can predict their behavior easier, once again I refer you to my book. There is an entire chapter on decoding your pigment labels. And now I'm going to glaze the bottom wing with a layer of indigo. My coral spots are completely dry, so I can safely paint around them, going slightly over the edges of each shape to make sure there are no gaps left behind. This helps the outlines stay crisp and clean. Since indigo has a naturally deep value, it easily darkens the area without overpowering the red spots. It actually helps sharpen their contrast. And my secret number 6 is all about glazing. Let me show you how I use this technique, and then I'll walk you through how I manage water control, which I know is one of the biggest challenges for watercolor beginners. Now you might have noticed that I applied a thin layer of blue over the eye and body of the butterfly, right on top of the dry indigo. All the lights and shadows underneath still show through, but now the body has a bit more weight and a slightly different hue. That's the beauty of glazing. It's a watercolor technique where you apply transparent, watery pigment over a dry layer to shift the color temperature, deepen the shadows, and build subtle complexity in your painting. It's also a wonderful way to reinforce form and add realism without overworking your piece. So I'll go over the wings one more time now, using a darker mix to drop in a few shadow accents. Then I'll gently soften those with a clean, damp brush so the edges melt seamlessly into the first layer. And notice that I've switched to a very small brush. This one is called Escoda Chronos. It's a synthetic in size 00, which brings me to my final tip, water control. If you love adding fine detail, but find yourself fighting too much water on your brush or accidentally flooding your paper with water, try switching to a small synthetic one, like a size 0 or 00. Unlike natural hair brushes, which hold a lot of water and are great for big washes, synthetics are drier by design. They pick up just enough pigment for small, controlled marks, and because they have more spring, they behave almost like a pencil, perfect for drawing a tiny detail with precision and confidence. And if you'd like to learn more about my favorite precision brushes, check out this tutorial featuring a pine cone and a squirrel. It's linked on your screen and in the video description. Share this video with a fellow watercolor lover, and don't forget to subscribe for more watercolor magic. Thank you for watching and painting with me. I will see you soon.